Cheers, Jordan. Welcome to the call. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
We have our friend Jordan Klemons at
NYC Jazz Guitar Masterclasses.com.
Awesome. So welcome to the call. We'll do the approach that you discussed in your video, which is Insta-Bop, which is a method for improvising over chord changes that's sort of, in a way, a complement or an extension of my own approach I've been sharing. It's called the bullseye method. You guys can look it up, link in the description. I have this pinnacle method as well. So today's going to be sort of an unofficial chat where you will walk me through the stuff on guitar using progressions, bop tunes, etc. But first, I want to know if you could give us the elevator pitch of your background and what qualifies you to have this sort of method. Like, where does it come from? And the story is fascinating. So just for everyone, for the audience.
Yeah, sure. Born in New York, raised down south, North Carolina, learned to play. Was really lucky to have some incredible mentors down south who let me hang with them. Got okay enough to fight my way to get to New York City, which I moved back here in 2012. Fell into hanging and playing and studying with John Scofield and Peter Bernstein and Brad Shepik and all these incredible, wildly fascinating.
Brad as well. I wasn't aware. I knew for Bernstein and Sco, but Brad is monster.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolute monster. Had like 3 incredible years gigging at the Blue Note at, a bunch of clubs here in the city, playing with those guys, studying with those guys, teaching as an adjunct at New York University. And then, was rushed to the hospital, put into the ICU for about 40 days, 2 brain surgeries. Survived, but lost the ability to play and had to start over. And I found that with my time with my mentors, we really never had traditional jazz guitar education conversations. That was just not what they were interested in talking about. It was not what they were interested in working on. Sometimes they were actively telling me like, hey, you're kind of good at that. You should stop doing that forever now. Like, don't ever worry about that stuff anymore. And so I had this whole different set of priorities and practice and wisdom that they'd handed me. And when I needed to relearn to play, I just decided I want to figure out what appeared to me at the time a more direct path to getting to what my mentors were saying was important, not what all the books and magazines and, college classes that I took growing up were telling me, because, these are the cats right here. So yeah, I just put my system together based on what they were recommending, mixed with, some of my own personal choices.
So hopefully this is what we're going to be discussing today, which is the way, which is a straighter path to doing bop, improv, and creating lines that you sort of honed in after you had to relearn, because you said you had limited time when you resumed playing, right?
Yeah, we can get a bit into that. I have like these different pillars. I guess I could just call them skills, and each one sort of stacks on the next. So Insta-Bop is not skill 1 or pillar 1 in my approach. So we'll probably start sort of at the end of pillar 1 and do like a little bridge lesson that'll start to wind us into Insta-Bop, which I can then point out some things that you can take with you to work on.
Nice. And for everyone as well, what I loved, what hooked me onto your approach is the fact that you had time to, learn it and forget it while keeping all the brains and everything, but you had very limited time to make the approach tangible. So for people that are watching this that are 50 plus who go, I want to learn jazz, but it's going to take years of bebop scales and I do transcriptions, whatever. You're here, you're proof to go like, you can shortcut this and do an approach that makes sense, that's musical, that sounds good.
I don't like to be too like used car salesy about this, but I will tell you full like transparency, because I was so sick, biological issues, medical issues. The first year of my playing, I was actually working with a hand surgeon because like I was so broken. I lost the ability to walk and see. Like my eyes stopped working. I had an eye patch on my eyes. You might actually see a picture of me hanging with Peter Bernstein right after I was released from the hospital. And I have an eye patch on my eye because my eyes weren't working. I was using a walker to get around. So I had to work with a hand surgeon to deal with my hand. And almost the first year of my relearning process, I was restricted to about 5 to 15 minutes of practice per day. Not per session, not like once in the morning, per day.
Per day. Wow.
Like doctor's orders, you can play 15 minutes, you stop, you ice, you don't touch the guitar until the next day. So that in some ways taught me, I don't want to like trash talk my mentors, but that year probably taught me more about how to learn music than anything my mentors ever told me, just because I finally was humbled to the point of realizing, okay, I can't fake any of this, and I can't just bull my way through with the 8 to 10 hour practice days like I had done for plenty of years of my life. Now it was finesse, strategy, like what are the priorities here and how can we internalize them as quickly as humanly possible? So the first pillar, the first skill that I worked on for myself and that I work with other musicians on is emotion ear training. I sometimes refer to it as practical perfect pitch. The outcome that we're after, the skill, is practical perfect pitch. Emotion ear training is the way we get there. So I'm going to kind of give a very brief summary of what that is, and then we'll immediately put it in action and start working towards Insta-Bop, which is skill 2. The idea of emotion ear training is to get beyond intervals. We want to like develop a deep, visceral, emotional, physical, body-centered connection with our notes. Okay. I'm sure you could hear this versus this, and you just know that one of those is a major chord and one of those is a minor chord. Sound has emotion built into it. And the way we're going to try and get beneath the intellect alone is with body movements. We're going to try and find body movements that express and emote these personalities, because every pitch has one. So for example, here's a really easy one to spot. I'm just setting up the tonal center of C major. I call this one the Navy SEAL note, and this is our body movement. This is our way of learning to like feel what this thing is, beyond just understanding that it's the tritone. It's not about the interval. It's not about singing. Like you don't need to hear this note first. You can approach that note from anywhere. Right? There's like a story going on inside this melody. These tunes were written to be sung on stage by actors telling human stories. Body movement helps us kind of get to that end goal that most of us, myself included, generally wait 20, 30, 50 years to sort of transcend theory and really start playing like an art form, an expressive thing. This is one of my body movements. Here's another really basic one. This is the question mark. This is the 2 of the scale. I just call it the question mark, right? Wes is like, he's not making a statement, he's asking a question. He's like ending here. And then the response, beat, beat, he takes us into the change, right? So this is kind of coming out of pillar 1, right? All 12 of our pitches have these different emotions and stories and characters.
I think you have a Matheny video. Well, you have a Matheny quote that goes into that. That's your course. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Guys, check it out. Link in the description.
Yeah, thank you. And at some point, I'll probably do a follow-up video. A lot of people wanted me to show all of the notes. I just wanted to show that this was possible. And like, here's step 1 to get started. Now go listen. Because like, if you hear, some people hear the notes differently than me. Awesome. Like, that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. That means you're connecting, right? The goal is to get to the point where when you're improvising, you just have this like gut feeling where you're like, you really want to play a certain, it's like a chef who tastes their sauce and they're like, oh, it needs more rosemary. Great. Don't trust the other chefs. Like, taste it, see what it, get to know the flavors of your herbs and spices. And that way, when you're cooking, you can just see what it feels like and you can improvise a better dish. That's the gist of practical perfect pitch. Now, where it starts to get really fun for me, it's already pretty cool, but it's sort of like a party trick, if I'm being honest, as a standalone skill. But when it starts to get really cool is when we start to bridge it into Insta-Bop. And I like to use the simplest elements possible, because the simpler things are, the easier they are to become playful with them. So for me, it's all about triads. Let's do this.
Okay.
Can you play just the stupidest, simplest, most kindergarten level 3rd position G major triad? I left the position. I shouldn't have done that. Sorry.
Ooh.
Oh.
I'm already started with the preview of coming attractive.
Yeah, this is so great. Like, you already went to step 2, which is the second you add a non-triad note, something interesting is going on. It's like that chef metaphor I used a minute ago. The major triad, or any pure triad, it's just like plain pasta. Like, there's no sauce on it. It's really boring. No one's going to go to an Italian restaurant and order plain pasta, right? Maybe like your 2-year-old nephew or something, but even they're going to probably want some butter, like something thrown on top. The moment you add a non-triad note to this, if you're patient and don't cram all of your non-triad notes to this, because there's 9 possible non-triad notes right now, right? We have 12 pitches in all of music. 3 of them are the triad, which means there's 9 non-triad notes that we could add. Each one of these is going to provide us a different emotion, a different color, a different flavor. The minute you added, I believe you played the flat 6 is what I think I heard. Such a great tension note. It's so angry. It's so pissed off. I call the flat 6 the Batman note. I don't know if you saw the most recent Batman movie. Like that note right there, that's the Batman note. That's flat 6. It's all over the soundtrack. Why? Because composers, musicians, even if they don't use the words I use, the terminology of like emotion ear training and using body movements, like we all get this stuff in a deep, visceral way. It's everywhere. Okay. I had a teacher, fortunately, that pointed this out to me, showed me how to practice it with body movement. And now I'm just putting what you already feel under the microscope and saying, hey, did you ever notice this? So the minute we add a non-triad note to a triad, we get tension resolution. We get color. We get emotions. We get phrases. Okay. Notice that it really wants to pull back in. There's like a center of gravity now. Now that's a really pissed off note, right? Here is like tension flat 6 is the bad guy. He's coming in. He's like gonna mess some things up, and all of a sudden I get freaked out, right? So now I'm the tritone, I'm the sharp 4. Okay, but that doesn't tell a human story. The body movement, the emotion does. And then there's the guy in the corner. It's like, what's the big deal? I don't get it. Like, who cares? That's the 2. Mm-hmm. Can you hear these different colors and emotions?
Oh, yeah.
This is the bridge between what I think of as skill 1, which is getting the ears open, but in a very physical, visceral, emotional way, and skill 2, which is just how do you know how to play authentic phrases, knowing what every note's going to be ahead of time consistently. So we're never trapped inside of scales or just outlining arpeggios and chord tones. So this framework, this idea of a stable triad with a single tension note, I was already combining, what did we combine? 3 different tension notes. We can combine them, but it's an ear training tension resolution game that's worth playing one idea at a time. And I call this structure a quadratonic. It's a 4-note scale, but it's so much deeper than a 4-note scale. It's an ear training practice. It's a phrase machine. It infuses emotion into what we do. It shows you where everything sits in the simplest way possible. And I'm a big fan of just sitting. When I was relearning, I would just pick 1 quadratonic per day, and I would just sit and do little games like this. So simple. I think of this as like speaking simple little sentences, and then I take my hand away, which is me learning to just close my mouth. Does this make sense? And we're not practicing technique, virtuosity. We're literally practicing, if you think of music as a foreign language, I'm literally practicing the simplest, most basic conversational necessary phrases. Hi, my name's Jordan. I need help. Where is the bathroom? Like the most essential things you need to go to a foreign country and be able to communicate with people, right? I'm not quoting PhD literature or Shakespeare or attending universities. It's just like conversational fluency. It does not take a long time. Each day when I was relearning during that first year, I would pick a different triad and a different tension note, and I would just explore. I would wake my ear back up, get my fingers honed in on it, and I would always remove my hand away. Okay.
Good.
Does this make sense?
It does. It's amazing.
You want to give it a shot real quick?
Okay. Pick one. So G major triad plus pick one, and I'll give it a try because I haven't really rehearsed that.
Sure. All good. I refer to the nomenclature, the way I refer to them is G major, tension 2, because it's not just the 2. We're not adding the 9th, like the chord tone. It's the same pitch, but this idea is all about function. It's all about splitting the notes apart into a yin and a yang, a stable and a resolution and a tension note. So I respect that tension note by stating it. G major, tension 2.
So G major. Okay, I'll try.
Yeah. No, you keep doing you. I wanted to provide some more advanced harmony underneath you. I didn't mean to throw you off your game. I was playing an F. You were playing G tension 2. I put an F7, an F13 voicing underneath you.
Yeah. Sounded awesome.
Right, there's the angry Batman note. There's the question mark note, but these are all based on G. I'm superimposing them over F dominant.
Yeah.
So G major tension 2 is G, B, D with an A note. Chord tone wise, that's the 9th, the major 3rd, the sharp 11, and the 13. And when I added the Batman note, the flat 6, that's E flat, which is the flat 7 of the F dominant. But we're not hearing this big, clunky, like advanced sounding melodic minor. We're hearing these simple little, hi, my name is Jordan sentences.
Yes.
They're just lyrical, right? And we'll take it one step further. Anytime, this is a melodic triad, 10 commandments. It was etched into stone on Mount Sinai. Anytime you're playing a major triad with a tension 2, there's a blue note hiding a half step above that 2.
Right. Nice.
Now, that makes sense from the standpoint of just basic chord scale theory thinking, but here's an F7 again.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, does that sound like a wrong note? To me, it does not sound like a wrong note. It sounds like a blue note.
Define wrong.
Yeah. Well, here's what's interesting is that we're suggesting a relatively advanced mode of melodic minor. Mm-hmm. This is F Lydian dominant. So we're suggesting C melodic minor. F Lydian dominant has a sharp 11 in it, which is B natural, right? What pitch is the blue note that I just played?
It's B flat or A sharp.
Yeah. Yeah, which is what chord tone? The natural 11. So the reason I refer to it as a jokingly tongue-in-cheek as like a wrong note is because most people would say that's an avoid note. Like, this is Lydian dominant. Do not play the natural 11. For the love of God, please play the natural 11. Just learn to hear it as the blue note and then use it so that you've got these cool, lovely, lyrical, bluesy, soulful phrases. Inside of what should sound like an overly excessively academic harmony.
7 sharp 11. Yeah, it's like the whole. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this all making sense so far?
It's tremendous. So recap: 3 main notes that are at the heart and center could be over a G major chord. Now we just see it could also be over another chord, like F is one that you played, plus one tension note that has a sense of tension and release into the R3 good ones.
Exactly.
That's tremendous.
And the way you know that you're headed in the right direction is that the root note of the triad should sound like the most stable resolution point you have. I call it melodic do. It's not the root note of the chord. The root note of the chord is F. Yeah. You want to hear something freaky? Check this out. Watch this. That's like the James Brown vamp, right? It sounds like the flat 7.
It's an F. It's the root.
I'm playing the F note melodically over the F7, but it doesn't sound like the most resolved note. It sounds like the James Brown funky flat 7 wanting to resolve up. Why? Because I'm structuring everything around the stability of the G major triad. So that reforms and reshapes the entire melodic framework. Does this make sense?
Yeah, in our ears and emotionally as well, as you mentioned. That's the...
Exactly.
I mentioned when we met last time that there was always this note I would be playing over pentatonic superimposition. I'm like, how does the one of the chord sound like a tension? And it was on a C Lydian or whatever, I don't know what we talked about. And now you sort of answered that for me. It's like emotionally, melodically, the framework makes this, even in theory, it's like, it's the root of the chord we're playing. But the root in the context of this melodic improv sounds not as stable as an undernote, which is crazy.
Yeah. So the way that I try and essentially what we're doing right now, we're discussing polytonal music. So I spent quite a number of decades exploring sort of traditional chord scale theory thinking. And then I was introduced, one of my mentors, Stefan Harris, introduced me to more polytonal thinking, Bill Evans style post-bop piano, which I'll get back to in a minute. But what I've come to realize is that chord scale theory is totally right. It is absolutely correct, but it's a correct way of looking at it's a correct two-dimensional view of a three-dimensional world. So it would sort of be like if we had a sphere floating in front of us. If you just look at it without moving around it, it looks like a circle. And it would not be wrong to say, hey, look, there's a circle floating in the air. But the minute you start to walk around it, if it were a two-dimensional flat circle, the minute you start to walk around it, that circle would start turning into an oval and would eventually morph into just a line.
Exactly.
Because you're standing on the side of it. But if you walk around a sphere, it's going to look like a sphere no matter where you stand. So Stefan Harris, what he showed me, and I spent quite a long time studying with him, and he influenced what I now refer to as our fifth pillar, our fifth skill, which is the imaginary piano player framework. And it's built on the concept that the reason piano players are so much farther advanced than guitar players is not because they have 10 fingers. Like, look at any transcription from any of the great piano players. You will pretty much never, I'm going to go ahead and say never, but at least almost never, you will never see 10 notes at the same time.
Right.
But you will 95% of the time see stuff happening in their right hand and their left hand, either simultaneously or back and forth. And when you actually break it down and look at what they were doing, quite often, it's a triad or some slight variation of a triad in the right hand with a simple shell voicing or some variation in their left hand. But they're superimposing, let's say, a G major triad over a F7 shell. And because of that, they have these two different hands. They can literally look down and see them. That gives them the ability to do two very simple things at the same time. And it creates, it's almost like a mirage in the desert. It's an optical illusion. There's really nothing complicated going on or advanced. It just sounds like it.
Sounds
and
awesome.
That is effectively what we're doing. We are taking on this framework of having two hands. We're letting our right hand play around with this G major triad. It's just a G triad, but we're goofing around with it. And then our left hand is playing this F7 shell.
Tremendous.
That's fairly advanced, but does that make sense conceptually?
Does. I mean, I feel from little piano I've done for functional harmony, whatever, you're giving me, like, I have a hunch right now just to drop this on the floor and just go and play piano because, like, yeah, it's all there. Like, but I wouldn't. But yeah, totally get it.
So what ends up happening is that in the left hand, the harmony, it's an F7. Like,
super simple.
That's not wrong to say it's F7. The F note if the bass player is playing F and C, that's what they should be doing. It's supposed to be that. But the right hand of the piano player is not doing the same stuff. That's what I mean when I talk about 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional. If you only think of F7 as Mixolydian or Lydian dominant or 1-3-5-7, like none of that's wrong, but it's basically describing the piano player's left hand without ever taking into consideration the fact that they have a whole other limb that they are doing things with, and very often very simple things, but just unexpected, like a G major triad. So if Bill Evans were to play some lines with this harmony and resolved it to like the most in-sounding note, it would likely be the G major note, even though his left hand is leaning into the F natural note. Did I say G major? I meant G natural.
Yeah. And one thing, when I talk to students, generally a lot of them would say, oh, you're substituting. And that's where I'm like, well, not quite. You're superimposing. You're thinking about doing something very, very basic, but doing advanced, well, it's triads.
Yes.
Or simple structures on top of it. It could be 3 or 4 notes. Just how they relate to that. It's like you didn't sub anything. It's not even a tritone sub. It's nothing. It's just
exactly
7. But
I get asked that all the time, and it's the trickiest thing because they're not wrong, and I understand why they're asking that, because from chord scale theory, they're like, oh, it's a, but that's like looking at the circle and saying, oh, I can take that circle and move it around. No. Just treat the circle as a sphere, but you have to learn to sort of let go of some of the preconceived ideas, and to start to see the reality of this 3-dimensional object. I don't know if you remember in the 90s, it became, I think it was in the 90s, it became really popular. They had these like 3D posters. Right. And when you buy them, you hang it on the wall. Like I remember people would put it on the wall in their house and it just looks like a bunch of blurry lines. And then you walk up and you stare at it long enough and all of a sudden your eyes like go out of focus and there's like a whale floating in the air in front of you. Polytonal music doesn't have to be that complicated, but it is a lot like the aural version of those 3D posters. Until you see it, it looks like a big mess. But the minute your eyes come into focus, for us, our ears, everything just makes sense. So you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So that was what I was getting at a few minutes ago, that the way you'll know that your ears are coming into focus when the root note of the triad feels like the most stable note. And whatever tension or tension notes you're using start to feel like they really need to move somewhere. Even to the point that the chord's root note, the harmonic root note, the left hand, should feel unstable. So let's mix this up to make it easier for our guitar player friends watching to try this, because until you get the hang of this not everybody has a sustain pedal, and jumping between triads and shell voicings is tricky.
It reminds me of theory. Like in a way we're doing theory, but we're not really doing theory. I saw a meme this morning. It's a Big Bang Theory guy. It's like looking at a paper. It's like, why does it work? Why does it? And then the 4th frame is like, oh, that's why. So now we're going to get the, oh, that's why here, and not just like pure on paper. Off we go.
There's an amazing Bill Evans quote that's a great way to wrap up what you just shared and bring us back into the music. He said, I forget the exact words, but effectively he said, a lot of people think jazz is intellectual theorem. It's not, it's feeling, which I love, because he's one of the most intellective musicians we've ever had. And even he is saying, he doesn't say there's no intellect to it, but the art form is the feel, which is why I love starting Pillar 1, Skill 1, emotion ear training. Move your body, make funny facial expressions, like connect with your notes down here. Yes, understand them, but like connect with them down here so they come out expressively as feeling. So when I first started studying with Stefan and began trying to translate his piano ideas onto the guitar, and then during my relearning process, because we don't have 2 hands, the easiest way to start is to treat our open 6-string as a substitute for a piano player's left hand. So I would always put everything into E.
Okay.
So let's take that G major triad and let's just move it up 1 fret to G sharp major.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, that, go.
Woo!
Yeah, keep that E note ringing out. Don't play any fretted notes on the 6th string. Oh, I heard tension 2.
Tension 2.
If you're watching this on YouTube, did you guys feel that? There was like a little booty. There's a question mark. Practical perfect pitch. I'm telling you, like you'll start hearing this stuff everywhere. Okay. There's the blue note again. That's Monk right there. That's straight note chaser and the opening to Reflections. I don't know if you ever noticed that. Yes. The same melody, the same motif he uses in straight note chaser is the same motif from Reflections. Yeah. Put that over E. This stuff is built. This is the quadratonics are the building blocks of our language. Can you improvise for a minute while keeping that E note lingering? Yeah. Now add tension flat 6 in.
And it's the E too. This is awesome.
But use it the way it wants to be used, which it's pissed off. It really wants to come down. Yeah. Yeah, even in that lower register.
That's such a sax line too. Like I've heard Donny McCaslin or some of like Chris Potter lines like that. It's like there's that huge gap and then awesome. Yeah.
So I would refer to this, what you're playing. This is a pentatonic scale. Technically, it's a hexatonic scale because you have a 6th note that we added in, a blue note. Mm-hmm. But the blue note, that just comes from the melodic triad 10 Commandments. So we don't even have to mention it because the fact that you're playing a major triad with the tension 2 implies that you're allowed to add that sharp 2. So what you are currently playing is a major triad, G sharp major, tension 2, and flat 6. Superimposed over E.
Right.
And when you do that, you're essentially creating the mirage in the desert of E major 7 sharp 5.
Yep.
It's like an augmented major 7. Now here's where the two-dimensional world really starts to crumble under our feet. Anyone out there who's watching who knows some of their, not really basic theory, but
C sharp
melodic. Yeah, melodic minor. This is we're playing with a relatively advanced-ish mode of melodic minor. This is C sharp melodic minor, but C sharp's not stable. In fact, if you add C sharp, this is a whiny 2-year-old. That's the emotion of the 4. It's like this little kid on an airplane throwing a tantrum.
It's like what we've done with the F7 over the G. Like it's that same thing. Like, the F now is... So now the thing that should be included in our chord scale modal system is just off.
It doesn't... It's... You can add it in, but it's a tension, right? And so it's C sharp melodic minor. Yeah, the notes we're using overlap with that, but really we're playing our root note melodically. Melodic do is G sharp. So this is, you could say that this is C sharp melodic minor as a parent scale. You could say it's the 5th mode of C sharp melodic minor because we're leaning into the G sharp note, but we're superimposing it over E, which means it's the 5th mode of melodic minor superimposed over the 3rd mode of melodic minor. Like the whole thing just starts to not make any sense. But if you can just like do this with your hands and look down and just say, okay, you are a G sharp major triad and you are an E major 7. That's it. That's all that's happening. Exactly. And then we're just ornamenting what the piano player's right hand would be playing. And what ends up happening, we get this is a relatively common-ish pentatonic scale, melodic minor pentatonic. We had G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, D sharp, and E natural. Superimposed over E, the chord tones are the 3rd, the sharp 11,
sharp 5,
sharp 5, major 7, and root. But here's what's weird. is that the root note, as you already pointed out, is unstable. It's the angry, pissed off, Batman note. Like it wants to move. So the root note is unstable. The third is now the most stable. It's melodic do. It's the most stable resolution point we have. The sharp 11 feels like the question mark note. Right, there's Charlie Parker. That's a major triad tension 2 quadratonic. I'm just playing his opening motif to Anthropology, but I'm putting it over E now. I'm superimposing it over an unexpected harmony. But the tension 2 still feels like the tension 2. The major third, the sweet, pretty note, is the sharp 5. The blue note is B natural, is the natural fifth.
Should be the dominant, but it doesn't dominate anything right now.
It should be avoided. We're playing an augmented of sharp 5 harmony, and the natural 5 is arguably the coolest note we can lean into. Again, it's one of those moments where it's like, don't avoid it, play it, just learn to hear it, taste those flavors, right? If you're that chef, like taste the different spices and then start cooking with them and understanding what it is that they're going to yield for you.
Now I want to make the changes, but we're not going to make the changes, but we get to where when stuff is moving. Now we've been really drone based building phrases, like crawling before we run, but I'm curious to see like in a full blown bebop, like 250 BPM rhythm changes. Where do you go?
Rhythm changes, I have a whole set of fascinatingly simple, like it's almost annoying how simple it is if you've been working on rhythm changes for a long time. It like pissed me off when I first noticed it. I was like, wait, why is no one, I've been trying to play this for decades now. Why didn't anybody point this out to me? If we can squeeze it in, we'll come back. We'll see if we can squeeze that in at the end. That might be a good segue into our third pillar, which I'll talk about right at the end if we have time. But let's stick with Insta-Bop first. In order to get Insta-Bop flowing, there are essentially 2 skills that we need. Okay. Skill 1 is what I refer to as triad ornamentation. Quadratonics is, in my opinion, the greatest form of triad ornamentation. Not only does it give you phrases and lyricism and blues, and it unlocks all this advanced upper structure stuff, but it's also just the best segue out of practical perfect pitch and emotion ear training. It gives you the tension resolution and the framework to start plugging in these body movements and emotions into it. The other forms of ornamentation would be things like leading tones, chromaticism.
Woo.
Like, as long as you can see the steel frame of the triad, those are it's like that game tag, right? You have like if you're touching the light post, you can't get tagged. The triad notes give you the safe spots. The tension notes, the quadratonic tension notes, give you the most lyrical, emotion-driven ornamentation devices. Leading tones and chromaticism, as long as you resolve to a safe zone, are great. Here's a perfect example. Again, Charlie Parker, Anthropology. That's the opening phrase to his bridge on rhythm changes. And if you break it, it's not a bebop scale. It's not an arpeggio. It's not anything. It's 2 D major triad tones. The harmony is D7. Chromatic passing tones. And then a D major tension 4 quadratonic phrase. 3, 4, 5. And then what does he do? 3, 1 of the D major triad. This is both forms of triad ornamentation squeezed into one. It's chromaticism and quadratonics, but it's all built around the framework of just the triad or the stable notes. Always start and end on the stable notes at the beginning until you get the hang of things. The second skill, were you going to ask something?
No, I'm curious about the second skill. Like we have triads, we've ornamented them. We've done tension 2, tension flat 6, tension sharp 2, or just below the third.
Tension 4.
Tension
you
4.
can add tension 4.
Okay.
Yeah. This is all skill 1 for developing Insta-Bop. Skill 2 is triad voice leading.
Triad voice leading.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is triad, meaning we're not going to worry about seventh chords. Seventh chords we can worry about later. Right now, you'd be shocked if you went through the real book and spent the time to look at every page in the real book and circle every 1, 3, 5, 7 chord arpeggio in there. You would be amazed how few there are.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's none. Seventh chords are important. I just said a minute ago, we'll deal with them later. But if you're studying guitar and everyone's telling you, like, you got to memorize your scales, you got to memorize your seventh chords, like, yes, sort of, but also just look around and you'll notice that there's actually not that many scale runs or 7-chord arpeggios in the language.
Yeah.
They're there.
Melodically, yeah. So like full arpeggios where you fully state it, like regardless of order, yeah, it's not very common.
Right. That's what I mean. And the reason that's important is that we're told to practice them as position runs.
Yeah.
You know, some teachers will take it one step farther and show you how to break down and ornament them, do other cool things with them, which is great. But in my opinion, and this is based on what I got from my mentors and how I decided to relearn to play, if we had to boil the entire art form down to one word, Bill Evans said it's feeling. That's a pretty solid word. Another word that I might use is movement. This is an art form of motion. We're not supposed to just...
Yeah, we'll leave that.
Like, it's not supposed to be this very rigid, stuck thing. It's flowing. It's organic. It's constant motion. Everything is moving. The swing rhythm is supposed to make you want to dance. The harmony creates these 5/1s, 2 5/1s, these tensions, these pockets of harmonic tension that want to lift you up and throw you through the form. The melody, think about a bebop scale, right? Chord tone, passing tone, chord tone, passing. Like, it's like a bouncing ball. Everything is supposed to move. The problem that I see with the way a lot of people are practicing, the reason jazz feels so hard is that we're sort of given these most of us grow up listening to non-moving music. That's the first issue. Right. Rock and roll, funk, great styles. I grew up listening to it, but they are static. Like, they're all about just staying put. So making that leap from static music to moving music is tough. And then beyond that, the conceptual ideas that we were told to work on are generally static ideas. Like, you sit in a position and you just practice arpeggios up and down, versus taking those concepts and practicing flowing through them. That is what we have to practice if we want to get better. I liken it to someone trying to learn how to ice skate. You're Canadian, right? So you could probably appreciate this better than I could, but you put someone in skates and put them on the ice the first time, and it's like, you're like, oh my God. And what's the first thing we do? We grab onto the wall. We don't want to fall. We feel, out of our element, so we grab it on the wall. Makes sense. But the problem is, you can't learn to ice skate if you never let go of the wall. You have to let go of the wall. Yes, you're going to fall. You're going to feel off balance. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable. But if you just keep after it, you'll eventually figure out how to balance, and then you can start to skate. So skill 1 is triad ornamentation. That's phrases, lyricism, connection. Skill 2 is, how do you start skating on the ice? How do you start moving? Voice leading. I like to do it using what I call the half note game.
That's where you take your material, you raise it the half steps at the part?
Not half step, half note.
Half note.
Yeah. And full disclosure, it's okay if you want to laugh at me when I explain this to you, because I literally laughed out loud. I was this punk little 20-year-old know-it-all when my first teacher asked me to work on this. And I swear I thought he was kidding. And I was so full of myself that I started laughing out loud at him. And he just sat there and waited until I was done. And I realized he was not joking. He put the metronome on and counted me in, and I was lost in maybe 5 seconds. Decades later, I moved to New York. I was teaching at NYU, and a musician at the program was struggling to play these changes in Scofield's ensemble. And I was hanging and playing with them as well. And Sco's amazing, but he's like so natural at this point that he doesn't always know how to explain to people he's just like, go practice, you'll figure it out. Like, you've got it. So he was struggling to help the kid play the changes, and I gave the kid this practice, this half note game. And I was worried that Sco would kind of laugh at me like I laughed at my teacher. And Sco goes, yeah, that's cool. I like that. Do that. So I often joke that it sounds simple, but it's Scofield approved. Here's the game. You play only 1-3-5 of whatever harmony you're working on.
Okay.
And you only get half notes.
So half notes.
It's
So
one of the most restrictive things you could ever try.
So when I said half steps, I really misunderstood. So you mean half notes like 2 beats, not quarter notes, not 8 notes, half notes.
Half notes. The beauty of this is that it takes all of your cool stuff away. Nobody has a whole vocabulary of hip half note riffs, right? So like if we're playing a 2-5-1, A minor, right? I like to think in triads, obviously, based on the first part of our conversation. I think it's the best starting point because it's pure stability. We can ornament them. You could do this with 7 chords. I just don't recommend it. You know, do what you will. Here's an A minor triad. As soon as you can play that, even remotely, you should never practice it again because that's just holding onto the wall. Instead, play 2 notes from this triad and then move. Force yourself to move. No matter how slow you have to go, just move. This is Autumn Leaves in E minor. I don't know if you can hear the changes. I'm playing 2 notes for A minor, 2 notes for D major, 2 notes for G major, 2 notes for C major. And you just keep moving. And what ends up happening is that you start on 1 note. That's an A note. You could start anywhere. It doesn't matter. And then there's this little intervallic leap. Okay. Keep your leaps to at most 1 octave, ideally less than 1 octave. That's just some good pro tip advice. Right? It doesn't have to be the nearest triad tone to it, but it can be. When you switch to the next chord, that's when you want to be really precise and try and get, it doesn't have to be the smallest distance, but it should be really small, at like one of the nearer notes to where you're at. You don't want something like terrible voice leading. Lovely voice leading. There's a pretty hefty intervallic leap. That's okay because I'm inside of a chord. I'm not trying to move. You see the difference?
Right. Yes.
This, I don't think could be done enough. Like every time I work on a new tune, I run that tune through the half note game. It teaches you how to move all around the fretboard and hear the way lines are going to want to behave when you start playing the changes. I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that was it. Like, we can't do this enough in that whatever comes after, if it's based on that skeleton, especially if it's heard right, not just like, oh, I can find it. It's like, yeah, but do you hear? Like, you played that thing, like you don't go out of your way to find like running the entire arpeggio, the rest of the scale, whatever. It's like, no, hear that triad, and then you hear the changes ultimately. Like, you just hear the chords.
Yes.
Awesome.
Now, I like to think of this as ice skating and juggling, or walking and juggling. Like, you would never go up. Like, my nephews are pretty young. I remember watching them trying to learn to walk. You know, it's so fun to watch. I would never in a million years try and teach them how to walk and juggle at the same time. It's just, it's not possible.
It's not responsible parenting.
Yeah. Juggling knives on fire. You just let them learn to walk. If you want, you could, if you think they are prone to the circus arts and magic, like, okay, give them some beanbag balls while they're sitting down, when they're not standing. Show them how to start working on juggling without walking. Let them practice these as 2 completely different skills. They are different skills. One is phrases, one is motion. The end goal is to eventually be able to do both and then to be able to start doing them together. But that, I don't want to say it happens naturally on its own. Like, you do kind of have to work at it a little bit. But if you can do each skill separately, it kind of does start to just work together. And that's when you start to be able to play. So all I'm really looking at here and thinking about here is I'm basically looking at the shapes of these triads. I'm ornamenting them with my quadratonic instincts because I'm just used to it. I know where those different notes are. I know what they're going to feel like. I know how they're going to want to move and resolve within the triad. And then the second it's time for the next, I'm ice skating. The second it's time to switch to the other leg, I just slide over to the other leg and I keep moving. And then it just becomes this like left, right glide along the ice while I'm juggling and doing tricks. Does this make sense?
It does, yeah. And then you can step back further, build ideas, interact, keep your being anchored in the feeling of it, then build a architecture of a solo. But that's like for later. But after you got these skills down, then you're in business. Like you can skate anywhere.
Yeah, this is what I mean when this is the concept of Insta-Bop. Like you don't, I wasn't playing any scales. I wasn't using any scale positions. I didn't arpeggiate any changes. Hopefully though, it did kind of sound somewhat like authentic jazz language because quadratonics are inside the music. Every page of the real book, you might not find a 7-chord arpeggio. You will find a quadratonic phrase. Like they're all over it. So I'm relying on very authentic phrases. And then I'm just being respectful of the changes. I'm not concerned with trying to outline them like I sometimes tongue in cheek talk about it as like being a little kid coloring, with a coloring book trying to color in the lines. Like I don't really care about that so much. I want to be respectful of the changes. I don't want to be imprisoned to them. So the voice leading allows me to take any idea I'm playing and just glide it along the ice. Now, as we get better, this is just, like I said, this is conversational fluency. This is the ability to move to India and hang there for a while and just talk to people, make friends, go to parties, get it. Like you don't have to be able to sit in on a PhD level class to visit the country. This is just the simplest, most direct path, in my opinion, to conversational fluency, where it's all about feeling, motion, all the priorities that my mentors had that I see in the legends, in their quotes. From here, we can totally, if we want, we don't need to. If a witch or a wizard came and like cursed me and made it where I could never play anything beyond this level for the rest of my life, I might be annoyed every now and then, but like I would still be able to play music and feel fulfilled because I'm still speaking the language. That said, there are all kinds of layers that we can move into. I didn't mean to do it. I shouldn't have, but I actually started employing some of those layers here that you may or may not have even noticed. I started using some of the upper structure triad polytonal stuff.
Right.
I don't know if you heard that, but let me slow it down. In place of the D dominant, I used a B as in boy, B major triad.
Right.
Okay, if you superimpose a B major triad over D dominant stuff, you get the 13 flat 9.
Love that.
Yeah. So if we just half note game, voice leading, that's A minor, B major. But you hear it as a 2-5-1.
Oh, we do. Oh, yeah.
I'm just in the upper extensions of that D dominant. I'm not imprisoned to the 1-3-5-7. I'm jumping straight for the sweet spot notes, the upper extensions. Let's get really wacky with this because I assume, need to start to wind down a little bit, and I want to end with like a big explosion of like, this is just the starting point, not the end goal.
It could be for another call as well. I mean, we have done a while and we were basically like at step 2 out of, I think you said 5, and maybe 5 would be like an exploration for another like podcast. But just reminding me the coloring analogy, I heard a quote by George Garzon who said, like, when we are forced to say play a full mode or full scale during a chord, we just blanket the chord instead of respecting it, right? We just like, it's brown, like you mix all colors. And it's like, so I see where we want to respect the chord without being bound. And that's a big key takeaway for a lot of my audience, which is typically older gentlemen who's listened to the whole like static, like the Led Zeppelin and played blues, which is hit a new chord and shred on that. Hit a new chord, even like Dream Theater or whatever. Hit a new chord, shred on that. But then we get to this realm where we go, you don't want to blanket the chord. You want to pay respect to it, and you don't want to be bound by this non-fluidity. So how do you do it? So I think this whole like talk we had has been so valuable, because you're showing like how do you make these changes happen without getting a PhD in music, which we did, by the way. There's this trombone guy. We had an interview with him. He did a PhD in music. He's a trombone player. Now he does some other work. He said, I did a PhD in music, and I'm going to summarize it for you in 15 minutes so you don't have to. So then we spent an hour talking about, showed me, chord scale theory. It was fun. Let's see how you can gently introduce maybe step 3 and leave it with a big bang, so we can maybe meet another time. If people are interested, just drop a comment and we'll go at it.
So, yeah, totally. So pillar 3, skill 3, I'm actually going to skip that for today. We can save that one for later if you want, just because there's really no shortcut to it. Skill 3, I call it the melodic progression. I'll introduce the concept of it, but then I'll actually show you how to start thinking about skill 4. The melodic progression is based on the idea that there are triads and quadratonics hiding inside of the melody of tunes. And everything we've discussed so far has been based on the idea of like, quadratonics and triads are in the language, they're there, but we're still thinking about the chord progression, which is, again, if a wizard or a witch cursed me and forced me to play that way the rest of my life, it's totally fine. But to truly breathe life into the art form is to play from the melody. And there are triads and quadratonics hiding in the melody. Sometimes they're basic root structure. Sometimes they're upper structure. Sometimes they jump back and forth. Quick example, Thelonious Monk, Round Midnight. That's not right. That's not the minor with the descending. Like that's the harmony. That's the piano player's left hand. But his melodic framework is just an E flat minor triad, tension 2. So what we can do, if we want, we can improvise from the chord progression in the left hand, or we can look at what someone like Monk or Ellington or Miles, anybody, it doesn't matter, look at what they were doing in their melody and ask them. It's an art form, but ask them like, what triads and quadratonics were you hearing? What are the important notes here? And then that becomes, instead of the chord progression, the melodic progression. That's where I like to improvise from the majority of the time, because then I'm acting as a servant to the tune, to the melody, to the composer, to the tradition, which there's pretty much nothing. I don't care how, I'm not going to speak to anybody else. There's nothing I can play that will ever come across as more sophisticated than
Duke,
being respectful to Duke or Monk or any of these guys. I am not the driver here. I should not be the driver. I can be. Occasionally I'll do it, but usually I want to be in the passenger seat. I'm the co-pilot. I'm like, all right, I pull out the GPS, and I'm like, all right, Duke, where do you want to go? And he tells me and I help him get there, right? Because he can't play the tunes anymore. That's our third pillar. Our fourth pillar is all about chord motion, because so far we haven't talked about seventh chords. Fourth pillar, harmonic storytelling is where seventh chords come into the picture. This is straight out of what I learned from Peter Bernstein, who, in my opinion, is one of the greatest accompanists on the planet. Guitar, piano, doesn't matter. He's so incredible. Like playing duo with that guy is like, it's like surfing a tidal wave out in the middle of the ocean. Like it's just so much momentum. He just like lifts you up into the air. And it's so frustrating when I first started hanging with him, like, why can't I play like that? And I would ask him, like, how do I do that? He's like, I don't know, just move. Just like stop playing the real book changes. Just move. Again, move. And I'm like, where do I go? He's like, I don't know, just play something else. Like stop playing that chord, do something else. Later, I studied big band arranging, and I was taught these like time-tested traditional types of motion that you can use for writing out a horn section. And all of a sudden I realized like, oh, that's what Peter's doing, but he's doing with shell voicings on the guitar. So as a quick example, the four movement types that I practice are dominant, diminished, chromatic, and diatonic. Measure 3 in Autumn Leaves, if we play in the key of E minor, is supposed to be a G major chord.
Right.
Ba-do-ba-dee, ba-do-ba-dee,
right.
To C major, right? 2, 5, 1, 4. G major, C major. Well, if you study chord motion, if you let go of the wall, stop playing the chords that are in the real book and think about the motion, a tune like Autumn Leaves is a little boring because like you keep resolving to G major and E minor. It's like G major, E minor, G major, E minor, E minor, G major.
Not when I gig with my students. They go, what? I'm like, well, you gotta play, man. I'm not Peter Bernstein, but this is a thing. that I held local gigs, right, in coffee shops, and that's the test. Like, you do time with me. Well, you do your time, your sentence, and then we get to that small coffee shop.
Oh, I love that.
Play standards, and well, you should come. It'd be awesome. And I play the changes, but I mean, after a point, after like a chorus or two, we're like, yeah, it's gonna go to E minors. Like, what else am I interested in hearing? It's just it's a standard. It's not a Duke song. It's just so then they would look at me and bizarre, as if they would need to catch up and latch onto that. I'm like, you don't need to. You just like play with you know. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So what do you do to your G?
The most obvious, like when I talk about dominant movement, people's eyes like glaze over and they're like, yeah, I know how to play 5/1s. I'm like, yeah, but most people see 5/1s as the prison, the cell door on their prison, and they're like trapped and they want to get out. And I'm like, it's not, it is the way out. You just need to kind of like the circle in the sphere. You just need to rotate the prison door. And instead of having bars, now you have a ladder that you can climb out of the cell. Dominant motion will give you near instant freedom in a chord progression if you learn to be playful with it. So what does that mean? Well, think about, how do you get where you want to go? We know that we want to go to C major in bar 4. Right? A minor, D7, G major, C major. Okay, what chord wants to go to C major? There's a lot of chords that want to go to C major, but the most obvious one is G dominant, which means if you want, in measure 3, you could ignore the G major and play a G dominant chord.
Absolutely.
D bottom. Do you hear how there was that little like that like longing to move? But it's a wrong chord. Doesn't sound wrong though. It sounds totally fine to my ear. Like there's a lot of different types of chord motion. We could even 2/5 this. We could even do D minor, G dominant C, ba-do-do B, ba-do-do B. When we're improvising, we can also improvise based on these changes. Even if you and I were doing duo and you just played G major, I don't care. It doesn't matter because the whole point is to create tension and motion that carries us forward. So one triad that I love to use over G dominant.
Minor?
E major triad over G7. Stefan used to call it the baby chord. He's a father, so he had body movements for his harmonies. So he would do this body movement. It's like holding his child. I don't have a kid, so I can't personally relate to that. So I think of it as like the romance harmony. It's like ballroom dancing with the love of your life, and you dip her and then you lift her back up. Well, this is an E major triad, which means I can play an E major triad over a G major chord.
Right. Interesting.
That's E major, tension flat 2. And then you hear out voice leads perfectly into C major.
And you're going somewhere. Yeah. And C major is not even like, it's not even the root. It's one of the chords of the song structure, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I'm just resolving to, I used root structure A minor for the A minor 7. I used the B major triad for D dominant. I used an E major triad for G dominant. And then I finally resolved, I gave that nice clean root structure sound again. So my improvised melodic progression that I'm just making up on the fly was
right.
A minor, B major, E major, C major.
Baby.
So you could literally plug the half note game into that.
You have to be mindful.
One of the most impactful quotes that I've ever heard, and I heard it when I had I just found out I lost the ability to play and was trying to decide, do I really want to go through this? I hadn't come up with this concept of like, can I develop a more direct path? I was still dealing with the medical trauma and then the emotional turmoil of whether or not I want to deal with this again. Yeah. And I was just watching some YouTube, and it came onto this Bill Evans interview. It was with his brother, the Universal Mind. I don't know if you've seen that interview. No. Really amazing. It's on YouTube. It's worth watching. His brother is like, they're both very well spoken. His brother plays a little bit, but he's just interviewing Bill about his whole process, and they cover all kinds of territory. And one of the things his brother asked him about the learning process and students in general. And, you have to humble your ego to be willing to hear what Bill's trying to say. At the time, I was beyond humbled. I'd had everything stolen away from me. And so it just hit home so hard. Bill said that the problem most music students have is they're trying to approximate the end goal rather than picking the most elementary, standalone, foundational components and just learning to be playful with them. So it's like, we're all taught like practice your scales and arpeggios and then just like listen to Charlie Parker and try and approximate it. And there's definitely value to that. But if you think about what that's doing, it always has you like reaching outside of yourself. You're like trying to grab something that's far away from you, and you you'll touch it. You'll get your fingers onto it, and then it'll slip through your fingers. And right. Bill says that if that's the only approach you take, that it will eventually lead you to so much confusion and frustration that you'll just never figure out how to move forward. And his advice, which is kind of antithetical to what every college class ever took, everybody, until I got to New York and started hanging with my mentors, his advice was just put all that stuff aside, come back to the most basic things, and be real and authentic and genuine about it. Learn to be playful, learn to control a triad, learn to infuse just a silly little tension too. Like he didn't talk about quadratonics, but his advice was just to learn to be playful and authentic and real with the simplest things. Because then what we're talking about is instead of trying to find music out here, we're planting seeds inside of ourselves and letting them grow and flourish. And you can do both. That's totally fine. I didn't have the luxury of doing both because I was restrained to 10 to 15 minutes worth of practice a day for a year. So I had to pick like the fewest number of things to work on to get back to playing as quickly and efficiently as possible. And I decided, based on that quote from Bill, he just inspired me so much with it, as well as the wisdom from my mentors, I'll come back to the advanced stuff later. I'll figure, that's icing on the cake. I got to figure out how to make a batter. And then I got to get that batter into a mold and put it in the oven. I need a cake. And then I'll figure out the icing. So if that carries any inspiration for anybody, that was a huge moment for me.
Such a life lesson too, like the authenticity and like very basics, but being playful could be a moment with family. It could be work. It could be gymnastics. I don't know. People love other stuff. It does remind me that hearing certain pros, like you said, frustrated. I think there's a stigma, like frustrated jazzer. You walk into a club, you're like, yeah, he's really not feeling it. There are people I knew, like people in Montreal, like so-called good career players, 50, 60, you hear them. Every solo, I'm not going to name names, but every solo seems like, here's a guy who's perpetually dissatisfied with his own playing. I'm like, and I realized I don't want to do that. I didn't go through the same health issues as you did. But I'm like, it's supposed to be something that's felt. So that's why I'm very left brain, very cerebral. I studied statistics. I'm a programmer, actuary. I work for the government. I'm right. So I'm a math.
I didn't know.
Right. I love spreadsheets. I do C++.
You're alone on that one.
Yeah, and I just love that stuff. But there was a point where I just decided to be a space cadet when it came to this, because it was the only outlet I could have. So people like, what? I would just go out, play gigs. I'm like, yeah, I know the changes, but I'm going to play absolutely what I want and what I feel over these changes. And I went through phases where it was like hard to go through with the mindset of like, I'm going to play whatever. And then eventually I started to play more in the changes, just because it was more authenticity and not just like, oh, this is correct, this is not correct. Like, encyclopedic knowledge can be good, but I just elected not to apply like the left brain to that thing, which is, I think, why you and I met in a way. So it's very poetic, but here we are.
Yeah. If you don't mind me throwing in one tiny final point right at the end, this is something that proved to be very powerful for me. It's a realization I had when I was relearning, and it's very similar to what you were just saying. And if anyone watching gets any inspiration from this, I had to figure out a way intentionally and consciously to develop two totally different minds when I was relearning. And I talk about this with my own students quite often. I call it the practice mind and the play mind. They're totally different. They should not bleed into each other unconsciously. Like you should be able to switch between them. And when you're playing, you should be just literally having fun. Like you're like a little kid at school at recess. Like you're just having fun with your friends or maybe alone. Very rarely should you ever feel frustration or I'm not good enough. Like you're just you've built your toolbox up in your practice shed. When you play, you're just in the cook in the kitchen, throwing stuff into the pan and seeing what happens. In the practice mindset, I often tell my students and remind myself of this, you should never experience zero frustration.
Oh, that's
but you should never experience too much frustration either. You like your frustration is sort of the check engine light of the car. Yeah. You want to keep it on, but like as it should ideally be the least amount of frustration possible. And the game is to come up with something you can't do yet, to sit down with it, to feel a little bit frustrated, but try and turn it into a game, have fun with it, be playful. And when you notice the frustration disappears, fantastic. It's like a video game. You just beat the level. Now you're done. Now move on to the next level. Make it a tiny bit harder. Don't jump from level 1 to level 17. Just go to level 2. And now you're a little bit frustrated again. It should be built on what you just accomplished. You just change it ever so slightly. You're frustrated again. You continue moving forward. And it's like climbing a ladder, like one rung at a time. It's human nature to want to jump 17,000 rungs at once, but you're just going to end up falling anyways. So just step on the first rung, like enjoy the process of it, and then climb yourself up to the second, enjoy the process. And then when it's time to play, you put all of that stuff aside and you just trust that whatever you did in the shed, however much ladder climbing you did, will be enough to help you say something in the moment when you're actually in the play mindset. That's how I like to view things.